next thing I want to do is check my tire pressure. So normally on a mountain bike, you have a battle between grip and rolling. So when you're pedaling, the higher tire pressure makes the bike roll better and makes you easier to pedal. So you kind of want that. You're like, yes, I don't want to kill myself pedaling with low tire pressure. So I want to have it up high enough where, I can roll along and I'm not going to be completely dead from pedaling. But you also want some traction because the higher the tire pressure, the worse the traction. Low tire pressure, better traction, better cushion, but it's a lot harder to pedal. Now that I have an e-bike, I'm not so worried about the pedaling part. So I can lower the tire pressure, lower it down to about 30 pounds, just enough to give some give, have better traction, nicer ride, better give. Normally I'd put about 40 in it, probably 45 in the back, because there's a lot of weight on the back. Now I can go down to about 30 and have a better ride. Another thing I want to do is I want to change the pressure in my shock and my front forks. And I'm going to do that with my high pressure pump here. So because I'm adding about 20 pounds to this bike, almost like doubling the weight of the bike, I really need to add some more pressure to this just to make the suspension work properly. I noticed on like a test ride that I had, it didn't really work properly. It was real smushy and cushy. And then I'm going to do the same thing with the forks. Anyway, shock pump, cool little thing to have. The forks have air, but there's only on a left tube has air pressure in it. The right tube has the compression and dampening. Dampening? Not quite sure. The next thing I'd like to do is go ahead and tighten up the left side of the handlebar. I went for a ride, and I kind of like the way everything is oriented here. I think I'm going to move the bell closer to my thumb when it's here. I think I'll put it, I don't know, maybe down like that a little bit. So I'm riding maybe that way. And then the other thing I want to do is I think I'm going to reattach this. I think I'm going to, well, because this double stick tape here this is okay. I like where this is, but this double stick tape, it seems like if it hits something, it's just going to get knocked off. Look, that just came right off. I think I'm going to put some epoxy on there and kind of make it more of a permanent thing. So tighten up this belt, and then I think I'm going to also move this controller closer to my left hand here. Maybe something like this, just so it's easier to, Okay, so we're just going to mix up a little bit of 2-part epoxy. Okay, toothpick. Put on, I could probably just leave this here. Whoops. Nope, don't. All right, so this is the rear shifter. Fits nicely right in there with the brake. And if you look right in here, there's a little plastic plug that you take out, and then you can feed the old cable out and feed the new cable in. and then it hooks into a little thing in there. So let's try to feed that in there. So I've got the cable threaded in there, and I think, oh, did it go? Oh, hey, we're going in. Yeah, we got it there. You can see right there. All right. So we're going through. So I don't want to go all the way. I'm going to back this all the way down to 0 because you can adjust it. So we want it all the way in so we can stretch the cable tighter. So before I thread the new cable all the way through here, I want to try to put this shift indicator in place, shift sensor, and I had kind of marked it. So what I want to do is take out this section of the cable and insert this into it. This doesn't. If I held this right here with the vice grips gently, it's because I don't want to just cut it with some wire cutters because, you know, that would smash it. And you need to kind of maintain a hole. As we know, it's always good to maintain a hole in the center. And then if I have this little thing, well, that certainly doesn't undercut very good. You know, I have a little cutoff wheel on my Dremel. Let's try that. Okay, maybe I can just not use this. That doesn't seem like a good of an idea. And if I was going to go get a cavity drill, this would be perfect tool. I think that's pretty freaking cool, man. Ah, that seemed too easy. All right, so now let's push the cable back, or not back, all the way through. Wow, there it goes. Look at that. That's cool. How neat. Okay. So then this thing, I assume this is the SS01. So I assume the shift sensor goes like this? I don't know. Does it go like this? Does it matter? Well, let's pull this out. And if we put this through the hole, oh, okay. I thought that was going to be hard. I was like, oh, this is going to be challenging, but no, pretty easy. And does this go in here? Oh, and that goes in there real nice. Dang. So if we just have this all the way out. All right, so I just shifted it into the highest gear. That's where the derailleur's all the way relaxed over here. And then I just pulled the cable kind of tight and tighten this here. And it seems to go pretty good. That's sweet. At first, let's kind of do this. This is kind of a wimpy zip tie. That's asking a lot of that part of the zip tie. Cable ties? Tie wraps? What do you call them? I don't know. Put that in there. There we go. That's better. More beefier. Sweetie, man. Wow, that is really cool. What else do I need to do? All right, so a couple things left to do. We need to put in this little plug, and then if I sort of take a stab at that, Allen, tighten up our shifter. And that's a pretty big mama jama. One of the issues that I have with my other e-bike is the throttle doesn't go all the way. And that's a bad thing. You never want your throttle to not go all the way. That's cool. Works great. I think that's going to work pretty good. And then gears and going. All right. Neat. All right, so here was my plan with the battery. The mount normally goes where this water bottle is and screws in here. I'm not going to drill holes in my frame to mount that big mounty thing. That just was not going to be cool. I was not going to do it. And then I realized that if I take out that mount, the battery itself kind of has a channel to it underneath there. A nice channel. I just had to cut out this front part a little bit to fit right along this, the contour of this frame. And then I added a couple of spacers underneath and then put it on with double stick tape. These 3 zip ties, which are 250 pounds each. And then I filled it in. I don't know whether you can see underneath here. Let me show you. I filled it in underneath here with some Loctite, like construction adhesive. Maybe that's not the right word, but it's gap filling and it's hard. I filled this all in, the gaps that are along the side of the channel, and it hardened up really nicely. And so that's going to provide a lot of support if the battery does kind of pivot or wants to pivot on that. It can't, because that's going to put it in place. We took the lock off because there's nothing to lock it to, and I just put some Gorilla Tape on the inside and the outside. I did the same thing with this here. Just put some Gorilla Tape in there. And then the old wiring, the wires came out underneath here in a big connector, and of course that wouldn't work. So I took it apart, I took the wires up, ran them through here and into a grommet back to this, which I think works really nice. I could probably add another zip tie right there. That probably wouldn't hurt. And then, so that's really nice. So I think I mentioned my neighbor John was nice enough to give me that. And I think we're done. I adjusted the front headlight and tightened that up. And I don't think there's anything left to do but go for a ride. The bikes that have a motor in the back wheel, a hub motor, it just drives the wheel. It's pretty simple. And the whole gear, the cranks and the rear sprocket and chain and all that, they don't really have anything to do with the electric motor. They're just pedaling, which you don't pedal that much anyway. But when you have a mid-drive motor on the cranks, it's a whole different deal, because you have the motor is actually turning the cranks, which turns the chain and the whole rest of the mechanism there. And yeah, it makes a big difference. So it really identifies or highlights any problems that you may have with your gear system. So if you have any weaknesses, like I had a frayed shift cable problem, I have a derailleur that doesn't seem to be very aligned because it's been bent to crap for several times, and I've had several broken derailleur hangers. The wheels are worn out, derailleur doesn't work quite right, and chain is old. So I had to put a new shift cable. I ordered a new derailleur with a derailleur hanger and a new chain, and I'm going to replace all of that with the hopes that it all makes it work a little bit better, because there's some binding. And I think the way Lily explained it is that when I'm riding it, I can compensate for a wanky uh, gear system. We'll put it in 5. This is 5, going 25 miles an hour. Really moves. So I can compensate for a wanky gear system. But the system doesn't know that. It just pulls when you tell it to pull. And when it has a bind or something, it doesn't stop or feel it or sense it and slow down. It doesn't go, oh, something's binding, this isn't right. I'm having a problem, I should back off. Nope, it just keeps pulling. Well, I think that just about does it. I think I have all the bugs worked out. I went for a few rides and it works pretty good. A couple of the things that I encountered is we talked about the weakness in my derailleur. So I bought a SRAM X5 derailleur from Amazon and a new KMC chain and put those on, and I think I have it adjusted right. And the other thing I had was I didn't have any slack in this shifter, and it was very tight in here. So when the suspension compressed, it would actually pull the cable, and then the gears would change like that. So as I was going over bumps like that, the derailleur was actually moving back and forth between the gears, and it was causing a lot of crunching. So I put a nice loop in here. I made sure these weren't too tight and it can move back and forth as the suspension goes up and down. So I think it'll stay in gear. I think I'll probably just keep it in like 3rd or 4th gear most of the time and just let the motor do most of the work. I did unhook the shift sensor because that seemed to kind of be a problem. And I unhooked both of the brake sensors because it seemed like when you put the brake on and then you let the brake off, it would connect and then the motor would sort of lunge. And the same thing with this. I think the problem was when I had that, when it was suspension was pulling on the cable, is that sensor was sensing the cable going back and forth like I was shifting gears, and so the motor was going on and off, and it was crunching and going on and off. So I think most of it was not really the problem with the kit. Most of it was my bike and my installation. So I think once I got a better knowledge of how the system works and was able to install it a little better, now it seems to work really good. But there's a lot more fiddling with a mid-drive that involves all of your drivetrain than with the pretty bulletproof rear hub motor. That was like slap it on and you go. But this thing, it has been a lot of fiddling and I've had to make a lot of improvements. But anyway, I'm really excited to go on my first actual mountain bike ride. I think I'd like to start a new section of this channel called Mountain Bike Adventures, which is a throwback to another thing that I used to do. And Mountain Bike Adventures, I'll take you on a bunch of my favorite trails. I'll talk about the history of the trails and my history with the trails. And then we'll go and we'll see what they're all about, and we'll see how this thing performs. But the build process, I believe, is done. And so let's close out this part of the video and all 3 parts. And we'll see you next time on Scott's Garage. Thanks for watching.